I, the absolute will.
At the library of my university, there are incredible options to study the world. Here, one can find almost everything they are capable of imagining: science, fiction, non-fiction, and religious literature.
To the latter group belongs the work I would like to discuss today. Literature is a marvelous form of art. I've been a huge fan of it since my childhood years. Dad would bring me the things he used to read as a child growing up in the Soviet Union, where books were something immeasurably valuable. Soviet people didn't have much opportunities to see the world behind the Iron Curtain, so one's hunger for new experiences had to be assuaged by fiction books such as those written by Jules Verne. Although the works of this remarkable writer have never been my cup of tea, my interest in literature have been growing and expanding for the whole length of my life. When I was 16, I bought a book entitled Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche, which has lit up the candle of my huge fascination with philosophy. There are certain parallels between the legacy of Nietzsche and the book I'd like to discuss with you, my lovely viewer. The book's called I Am the Absolute Will, and it's not a book at all, but a letter to a friend whose author is Ladislav Klíma, the Czech philosopher, writer, poet, loafer, and mystic. In this piece, the author proposes a brand new worldview, ego-deism, a pretty controversial worldview whose central doctrine is being God. Klíma assumed that he was the dreaming God creating the whole world around. This idea brings us to another postulate of Klíma's doctrine: the only existing thing is his consciousness. Nevertheless, the author of the letter describes to his friend certain steps required to become aware of the fact that one's consciousness is the only existing entity. The statement itself is quite vague. How comes that Klíma represents his views to someone, given the fact that everything, including other people, is an illusion? Well, that could be a smooth transition to the next aspect of ego-deism, namely the play, or put better, playfulness. Playing is central to the philosophy of Ladislav Klíma. Since nothing is worth being taken seriously, the world exists exclusively for one reason: to be played with. The main intention of the letter was to introduce the recipient to one simple formula: I am the absolute will. By repeating this and understanding it, one can become aware of their own divine nature, the nature of the dreaming God. The concept of dream is crucial for understanding the philosophy we are discussing right now. Klíma did really think that he was living in a dream, that the real world was as real as the images being projected in your head while you are asleep. Thus, there is nothing to do but to play with existence. One must not take it seriously, which can be reasoned this way. You have a dream about getting married, but marriage or even an intimate relationship is one of your biggest fears. In the dream, you get physically closer to the bride and the priest tells you, "Kiss each other, my lovely children." However, the only impulse you have is to push the bride away. You do it, she starts crying, the priest is shocked, the family members are ready to lose their consciousness, but suddenly you wake up and realize that everything was just a dream. Your fears got projected into this state, which is unexplainable by the means of contemporary science. According to Ladislav Klíma, the same principle works with life too. You are the dreaming God at whose disposal there is the absolute will, and every event, every action you take are the products of your infinite absolute will. Such a great concept. I like it very much, but I find it somewhat vague. First of all, is becoming God as easy as telling yourself some formula? Klíma stresses that the formula must not be changed, otherwise it won't work. I have tried telling I am the absolute will to myself, and then I had nothing but an impulse to visit a restroom. Secondly, who am I? Am I my thoughts? Am I my feelings or memories? Don't hope that I'll answer this question. I find it completely unanswerable through language. But, for the sake of the argument, let's imagine that I am my thoughts. There is a disorder called OCD, Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, which is often accompanied by negative intrusive thoughts, and I was diagnosed with it. Half a year ago, one thing occurred to me. I was enjoying my usual evening promenade in a good mood, everything seemed to be beautiful and fulfilling. I stopped at the bus stop and saw a bus and its happy driver, at which I wanted to wave in order to share the good mood I was in. But my brain created a small scene whose content was pretty disturbing. In this scene, I picked up a rock and threw it at the front window of the bus. My mood immediately went down, since the content of the thought was too unpleasant. Moreover, the condition in which intrusive thoughts occur is immeasurably tricky. The object of it starts to think that something's wrong with him, that he or she is a latent psychopath. Am I a psychopath? I wouldn't ever punch someone in the face, regardlessly of what they did to me, but creepy thoughts still do pop up in my head. Should I associate myself with them? Should I start killing people only because my brain projects things like that? I don't really think that I should attach my sense of self to my thoughts, since they can be very diverse and their content may be not corresponding with my inner values. They are just part of random noise in my head. Let's get back to Ladislav Klíma. A few days ago I was discussing ego-deism with my friend and she asked a reasonable question. If you were the absolute will, would you be willing to get into troubles? Would you do a bunch of unpleasant stuff to yourself? How comes that the absolute will does harm to itself? I replied that there should be a point. All suffering's meaning lays in teaching, in growing wisdom in oneself. But it's still not reasonable. If you were doing something to yourself, you would be able to stop it when it felt like enough. Nevertheless, one is not able to immediately stop doing psychological harm to themselves. It is possible, but you have to work on yourself. Your will, absolute or not, is not enough. Lastly, I would like to add that we all are extremely predetermined in our decisions. They are affected by our social circle, by our friends, by our family, and by our education. I'm not saying that it's impossible to change these factors, but I'm saying that your will is not entirely yours. Well, this piece came as chaotic as the majority of work I do. But I think that I've done a good thing, introduced Ladislav Klíma to you. His work is worth your attention. And if you speak Russian, I'm happy to tell you that I'm translating one of Klíma's works to my mother tongue. Thank you for being with me. Goodbye.